It looks like a rock, a lump of corroded green bronze about the size of a paperback book, sitting on a wooden shelf in a museum in Athens. Nobody has touched it in 2 years. It came up from the sea with marble statues and bronze arms and a beautiful bronze head of a philosopher, and next to those things, this shapeless clot of metal was worth nothing at all. Then, in 1902, an archaeologist named Valerios Stais walks past it. He stops, because something in the corrosion has cracked open, and inside the rock there is a gear. A toothed bronze gear, cut with tiny precise teeth, in an object that had been sitting on the seafloor since roughly the year 60 BCE. Nothing like that was supposed to exist. Not then, not for another 1400 years. So what was it doing at the bottom of the Aegean? To understand what you are looking at, you have to go back 2 years earlier, to a storm. It is the spring of 1900. A boat of sponge divers from the island of Symi is sailing home from North Africa, and the wind turns against them. Their captain, Dimitrios Kontos, shelters in the lee of a small barren island between Crete and the Greek mainland, called Antikythera. There is nothing there. Cliffs, goats, wind. While they wait out the weather, they do what sponge divers do, which is dive. A diver named Elias Stadiatis goes down in a canvas suit and a copper helmet, air pumped to him by hand from the deck. He goes down 45 meters. And he comes up fast, babbling about a heap of rotting corpses and horses lying on the seabed. The captain thinks he has nitrogen narcosis. He goes down himself, and he comes back up holding a bronze arm. The bodies were not bodies, they were statues. Dozens of them, marble and bronze, scattered across the slope of the seabed where a ship had gone down. Not a small ship, a Roman-era cargo vessel, more than 30 meters long, hauling the wealth of the Greek world westward toward Italy, and the coins later recovered from the sight point to a sinking somewhere around the 70s or 60s BCE. Think about what that cargo actually was. Greece had been conquered. Its cities had been sacked, its temples stripped, and its art was being shipped in bulk to decorate Roman villas. This was not a merchant ship. This was a hold full of loot. And in that hold, wedged between the statues, was a wooden box a little larger than a shoebox, with bronze gears inside. The recovery was brutal. The Greek navy came, and the sponge divers worked the wreck through the winter of 1900 and into 1901, going deeper than anyone should have gone with the equipment of the time. 1 diver died. 2 were paralyzed. They brought up masterpieces that now fill an entire wing of the National Archaeological Museum in Athens, and among all of it, in a crate of unremarkable fragments, came the lump. Which brings you back to Stais, standing in front of a shelf, staring at a gear tooth. What do you do with an object that cannot exist? For most of the 20th century, the answer was, argue about it. Some scholars insisted it must be a medieval astrolabe that had somehow fallen into the wreck. Others thought it was a navigational instrument. The problem was that nobody could see inside. The mechanism had been crushed, flattened, and fused by 2,000 years underwater. It broke into 82 fragments. The largest of them, the one called Fragment A, is a solid brick of corrosion with the edges of gears just barely showing through the surface. You cannot take it apart. Every attempt would destroy it. So you have to look through it. The first person to really do that was a British-American historian of science at Yale named Derek de Solla Price. He spent decades on it, and in the early 1970s he worked with a Greek nuclear physicist, Charalampos Karakalos, to fire gamma rays through the fragments and photograph what came out the other side. In 1974, Price published his results under the title Gears from the Greeks, and the pictures showed something that stopped people cold. There were at least 30 interlocking gears inside that lump, hand-cut, triangular-toothed, arranged in trains that drove one another at precise ratios. Price got some of the details wrong. He was working with shadows. But he was right about the thing that mattered, and he wrote a sentence that historians still quote, that finding this object in the ancient world was a little like finding a jet engine in the tomb of Tutankhamun. Then the technology caught up. In 2005, a team including the mathematician and filmmaker Tony Freeth and the astrophysicist Mike Edmonds of Cardiff University brought equipment to Athens that had never been used on an artifact before. One was an 8-ton X-ray computed tomography machine, built for inspecting cracks in industrial castings, which could slice the fragments into thousands of digital layers. The other was a surface imaging technique developed with Hewlett-Packard that lit the fragments from dozens of angles to make the faintest scratches on the corroded skin jump out. And the mechanism started talking, because it was covered in writing. Thousands of Greek characters, some of them 1.5 mm tall, engraved across the plates and the doors. Instructions, labels, a user manual written on the machine itself. Here is what they found. Turn the crank on the side of the box and everything moves at once. On the front face, a pointer sweeps around a ring marked with the 12 signs of the zodiac, and a second ring marked with the 365 days of the Egyptian calendar, showing you the position of the sun. Another pointer shows the moon. A small ball, half silver and half dark, rotates to show you the phase of the moon on that exact night. On the back, 2 great spiral dials. The upper spiral is divided into 235 cells, and 235 is not a random number. It is the number of lunar months in 19 years, the point at which the moon's cycle and the sun's year come back into alignment. The Greeks called it the Metonic cycle. The mechanism tracks it cell by cell, and the month names engraved in those cells are not Athenian. They are Corinthian, the calendar used in the Greek cities of the West and in Syracuse in Sicily. The lower spiral is divided into 223 cells, and there is a gear inside with exactly 223 teeth. That is the Saros cycle, the rhythm on which eclipses repeat, roughly 18 years and 11 days apart. And in the cells of that spiral, there are glyphs that tell you which month an eclipse will fall in, whether it will be solar or lunar, the hour it is expected, and in some cases a note about the color the moon might take. There is a smaller dial that steps through a 54-year cycle to correct the 8-hour drift in the Saros. There is another that counts down the 4-year cycle of Greek athletic games, and the games named on it include the Olympics, the Isthmian Games, and the Nar Festival at Dodona in northwestern Greece. Somebody built a machine that predicted eclipses, and on the same machine put a dial to tell you when the next Olympics were. Do you see what that means? This wasn't a sacred object locked in a temple. It was a device made for people who had lives and calendars and festivals to travel to. But the most extraordinary thing inside the box is smaller than your thumbnail. The moon does not move across the sky at a constant speed. It speeds up and slows down because its orbit is not a circle. The Greek astronomer Hipparchus, working on roads in the 2nd century BCE, described that variation mathematically. Inside the Antikythera mechanism, there are 2 gears stacked face to face, mounted on slightly different centers, with a pin on one gear riding in a slot on the other. As they turn, the pin is forced to slide in and out along the slot, and the second gear surges ahead and then falls behind. The output is a moon that moves fast, then slow, then fast again, exactly as the real one does. Someone took an abstract idea about the sky and turned it into brass. And then there is the twist, which is not the machine itself. The twist is what the machine implies. Because an object like this is never the first of its kind. You do not invent hand-cut precision gear trains, epicyclic mounting, and a differential-style output on your first attempt, and then load your one and only prototype onto a cargo ship going to Italy. The workmanship on the Antikythera mechanism is confident. It has repairs on it. It has a manual engraved on its casing, which is something you write when you expect other people to use the thing. And the ancient sources agree. In the 1st century BCE, Cicero writes about a bronze sphere built by Archimedes that reproduced the motions of the sun, moon, and planets, taken from Syracuse to Rome as war booty after the city fell in 212 BCE. He writes about another such device made by Posidonius of Rhodes, a philosopher who was alive at roughly the same time this ship went down. For 2,000 years, those passages were read as flattery or exaggeration. They were descriptions. Scholars still argue about exactly when the mechanism was made, and it is worth being honest about that. Price put it near 87 BCE. More recent work by researchers including Christian Carman and James Evans, analyzing the eclipse predictions on the Saros dial against the astronomical record, has argued for a starting date closer to 205 BCE, which would put it within a generation of Archimedes himself. Other specialists dispute that reading. The date is genuinely unsettled. What is not disputed is the sophistication. So where did it all go? That is the part that should unsettle you. There is no surviving successor. Nothing of comparable complexity appears anywhere in the archaeological record for the next 14 centuries. The tradition that produced this object does not evolve into something greater in the Roman world. It simply stops appearing. Some of the knowledge survived in a different form, carried into Byzantine and Islamic instrument making, in geared calendar devices and astrolabes that share a family resemblance. But the full complexity, dozens of gears modeling the cosmos in a portable box, vanishes from the record. The next time you see anything like it is in Europe in the 14th century, in the great astronomical clocks, in the work of Richard of Wallingford at St. Albans, and in the astrarium that Giovanni de Dondi spent 16 years building in Padua, finished around 1364. 1400 years of silence, and here is what makes that silence so heavy. The Antikythera mechanism did not survive because anyone protected it. It survived because a ship sank. Bronze in the ancient world was recycled relentlessly. A broken instrument was melted down and became a pot or a coin or a sword. Almost every ancient bronze object we have was either buried in a grave or lost at sea. Which means you are not looking at a rare survivor. You are looking at the one that got away. Think about what that does to the picture in your head of the ancient world. You probably imagine it as simple. Columns and togas and philosophers arguing in the shade, a world that thought beautifully but built crudely, waiting for the Renaissance to switch the lights on. That picture is wrong, and this object is the proof. Every mechanical thing around you right now runs on the idea inside that corroded lump. The gearbox in your car takes rotation and changes its ratio. The mechanical watch on someone's wrist is a train of toothed wheels dividing time. The differential that lets your wheels turn at different speeds through a corner is a descendant of the same logic. Somebody in the Greek world understood that you could take the movements of the heavens, reduce them to ratios, cut those ratios into bronze, and hold the sky in your hands. And then it was forgotten so completely that when it came back up out of the water, the people who found it thought it was garbage. That is the real lesson of Antikythera, and it has nothing to do with lost secrets or vanished super-civilizations. It is quieter and much more frightening than that. Knowledge is not cumulative by default. It has to be copied, taught, and used, or it dies with the last person who knew it, and the machines it made get melted down for scrap. Go to the National Archaeological Museum in Athens today, and you can stand in front of it. Fragment A is behind glass, mounted at eye level, lit carefully. It still looks like a rock. A shapeless clot of green metal, smaller than the statues around it, easy to walk straight past. 2,000 years of seawater have eaten almost everything the maker made. But lean in close, and along one broken edge, you can still see them. Teeth. Cut by hand, by someone who has been dead for 20 centuries, who looked up at the sky and decided he could build it.